The Watchful Stranger, a city that never sleeps. New York City at night is a paradox, a world caught between exhaustion and relentless energy. The streets hum with life, neon signs flicker in rhythmic pulses, and the subways, the veins of the city, carry a mix of stories, some mundane, others extraordinary. Evelyn Carter had spent decades in this city. An elderly woman in her late 70s, she had seen it all: the kindness, the cruelty, the evolution of the metropolis. But tonight, she was simply tired. The day had been long, her knees ached from the hours spent running errands, and she longed to be home, wrapped in her favorite woolen blanket with a cup of chamomile tea. She boarded the subway, just as she had for years, taking her usual seat in the corner near the door. The train was sparsely populated, a few passengers lost in their phones, a young couple whispering to each other, a man slumped over, either asleep or deep in thought. Evelyn adjusted her gray coat and clutched her handbag tightly, a force of habit she had developed over the years. The city had changed, and while she wasn't scared, she had learned to be cautious. What she didn't know was that tonight, caution alone wouldn't be enough. The man in the shadows. 2 stops later, a man entered the subway car. His presence was immediately unsettling. Dressed in a faded hoodie and ripped jeans, his eyes darted around as if scanning the car for something or someone. His hands, twitchy and restless, hinted at nerves or anticipation. KeanuReeves noticed him instantly. Sitting across from Evelyn, partially hidden by the dim overhead lights, Keanu had boarded the train a stop earlier, preferring the subway over a private car for the night. There was something grounding about being among regular people. No cameras, no bodyguards, just the unfiltered rhythm of the city. But his instincts, honed from years of training for action roles and an inherent sense of justice, told him this man wasn't just another commuter. There was a tension in his body, an intent in his movement. And then it happened, a sudden attack. The train lurched, and in a flash, the man lunged. It was so fast, so calculated, that even the handful of passengers barely registered it until it was happening. Evelyn gasped as she felt the sudden yank on her bag. Her frail fingers tightened instinctively, but the man was stronger. She was pulled forward, nearly tumbling off her seat. "Let it go, lady," the man hissed, his voice low, desperate. But Evelyn had lived too long to surrender so easily. "No," she shot back, her voice surprisingly firm. Keanu was already moving. Before the thief could fully rip the bag from Evelyn's grip, Keanu's hand shot out, clamping around the man's wrist like a steel vise. "Let her go," he said, his voice calm but laced with an authority that sent a shiver through the air. The thief flinched, startled. He had expected an easy score, not interference, especially not from someone who looked like he could break him in half with a glance. His eyes flickered up, and for the first time, he recognized the man holding him back. KeanuReeves. The name hit him like a jolt of electricity. But desperation is a dangerous thing. Instead of backing off, the thief yanked hard, breaking free from Keanu's grip, and took off down the subway car, shoving past the startled passengers. Evelyn let out a breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Oh, my Lord." Keanu knelt beside her. "Are you okay, Mom?" She nodded, though her hands were trembling. "I think so. But he took my bag." Keanu turned, eyes narrowing. The thief was making his way to the other end of the car, towards the doors. The next stop was approaching. He was trying to escape. The chase begins. Keanu didn't hesitate. He rose in one fluid motion and followed. The other passengers watched, some frozen, others scrambling to get out of the way. The subway car jolted as it neared the next station, but Keanu moved with precision, his body adapting to the rhythm of the train. The thief glanced back and cursed under his breath. He shoved a man out of the way, leaped over a row of seats, and reached for the emergency door handle. Keanu was faster. Just as the thief tried to pry the door open, a strong hand clamped down on his shoulder, spinning him around. "Give it back," Keanu demanded, his voice controlled but edged with steel. The thief's breath was ragged. "I don't want trouble, man." "You already found it," Keanu countered. For a moment, they stood at a standstill. The thief's fingers twitched around Evelyn's bag, debating his options. And then the train screeched to a halt. The doors slid open. For a split second, the thief made a choice. He turned and bolted. Keanu followed. A battle in the underground. The station was nearly empty, the late hour reducing foot traffic. The thief sprinted towards the exit, weaving past the turnstiles. Keanu wasn't far behind. The city had hardened him, trained him in ways beyond his Hollywood career. He wasn't just an actor who performed stunts. He trained, he learned, he adapted. And right now, he was locked in pursuit, adrenaline sharpening his reflexes. The thief took a sharp turn into a service corridor, thinking he could lose him. Big mistake. Keanu knew the underground well. He cut across the space between columns, predicting the man's movements. When the thief turned another corner, Keanu was already there, blocking his path. The thief skidded to a stop, panting. "Nowhere left to run," Keanu said. For a second, there was silence. Then the thief lunged, a sloppy punch aimed at Keanu's ribs. Keanu sidestepped effortlessly, his hand shooting out to redirect the momentum. The thief stumbled, but before he could recover, Keanu delivered a swift, controlled strike to his wrist. The bag fell to the ground. The thief, dazed, tried again, but Keanu caught him by the arm and twisted him around, locking him in place. "Enough," Keanu said, his grip unrelenting. The sound of footsteps echoed. Station security, alerted by the commotion, was approaching. Keanu let go just as the guards arrived. The thief, realizing he was cornered, slumped against the wall in defeat. Justice served, humanity restored. The security officers took over, restraining the thief as Keanu picked up Evelyn's bag. "Thank you, Mr. Reeves," one of the guards said, recognizing him. Keanu nodded but waved off the attention. Just doing what's right. He made his way back to the subway car, where Evelyn was waiting, her eyes filled with worry. As soon as she saw the bag in his hands, relief washed over her. "Oh, bless you," she whispered, taking it with trembling hands. Keanu smiled. "You're safe now." Tears welled in her eyes, not just for the return of her belongings, but for the kindness, the intervention when no one else had moved. She reached out and patted Keanu's hand. "You're a good man." Keanu simply nodded. As the train doors closed and the city continued its endless motion, Evelyn sat a little lighter. The weight of fear lifted, if only for tonight. And somewhere in the shadows, a silent protector continued his journey. Just another passenger in a city full of stories. Shadows of the past. A city that never forgets. New York City is a living paradox. It never sleeps, never stops, and never forgives. Its streets are a battleground for those trying to survive. And for many, every day is a struggle between hope and despair. For Marcus Mac Holloway, tonight was supposed to be different. Instead, he was sitting on the cold tile floor of a dimly lit subway station, his hands restrained by plastic zip ties, surrounded by security officers. His pulse was still racing from the chase, his breath ragged from the futile escape. His eyes flicked to the side, where KeanuReeves stood, calm as ever, watching him with a look Mac couldn't quite place. There was no smugness, no anger, just something, understanding. That made it worse. Mac had spent his whole life dealing with authority figures, cops, security guards, people who looked down on him. He knew the usual routine. Cuffed, tossed in a squad car, processed like just another statistic. But this was different. KeanuReeves wasn't like the others, and that unsettled him more than getting caught. The boy who vanished. 30 years ago, Mac Holloway wasn't a thief. He was just a kid. A boy who had dreams of playing baseball, of getting out of his rundown neighborhood, of making something of himself. But dreams were fragile things in his world. His mother, Teresa, worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. His father, a ghost, one of those men who left before their kid was old enough to remember their face. Mac learned early that the world didn't give handouts, not to people like him. By 14, he had stopped dreaming. By 16, he had started running with the wrong crowd. By 18, he had learned how easy it was to take what you needed when no one was looking. That was the first time he was arrested. His mother had cried when they took him away. It was the last time he ever saw her. A deal with the devil. Years later, Mac found himself in a cycle he couldn't break. Petty theft, short stints in jail, promises to go straight, only to fall back into old habits when the world turned its back on him. Then came tonight. He hadn't planned on robbing anyone. But when you owe the wrong people money, when your past keeps pulling you under, desperation makes the decisions for you. And so, he had seen the old woman. An easy mark, an opportunity. He hadn't expected KeanuReeves to be on that train. Now, as he sat on the floor, hands bound, he realized just how badly he had miscalculated. The unexpected conversation. The guards were waiting for the cops, standard procedure, but KeanuReeves wasn't leaving. Instead, he crouched down, resting his arms on his knees, studying Mac. "You got a name?" Keanu asked. Mac exhaled sharply. "What's it to you?" Keanu didn't flinch. "You don't look like the type who enjoys stealing from elderly women." Mac let out a dry laugh. "Yeah. And what type do I look like?" Keanu shrugged. "Like someone who didn't have a choice." Silence stretched between them. Mac looked away. He didn't want sympathy, especially not from a movie star. But Keanu didn't let up. "Why'd you do it?" Mac clenched his jaw. He hated these types of questions. No one actually wanted to hear the truth. So, he gave the easy answer. Needed the money. Keanu tilted his head, as if considering the response. "There are other ways." Mac's eyes flashed. "Not for people like me." Keanu leaned back on his heels. "You sure about that?" Mac scoffed. "What do you know about struggling? You're Keanu freaking Reeves." Keanu's face remained unreadable. "You'd be surprised." Something in his tone made Mac hesitate. But before he could ask what that meant, the sound of sirens echoed through the subway station. The cops had arrived. The unlikely intervention. Mac braced himself. He knew how this would go. They'd haul him in, process him, maybe give him a short sentence. It wasn't his first time, and if he was being honest, it probably wouldn't be his last. But then Keanu did something he never expected. He stood up and turned to the officers. "Let him go." Mac's head snapped up. "What?" The officers exchanged glances. "Mr. Reeves, this man just attempted a robbery." Keanu nodded. "And I got the bag back. No harm done." "That's not the point, sir." Keanu folded his arms. "He doesn't need jail. He needs a second chance." The lead officer sighed. "That's not how this works." Keanu reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card, and handed it to the officer. "I'll take responsibility." Mac stared in disbelief. "What the hell are you doing?" Keanu looked down at him. "Giving you a choice." Mac shook his head. "I don't need your charity." Keanu's voice was quiet but firm. "Then don't waste it." The officers murmured among themselves, debating the situation. Technically, it wasn't their call. Evelyn, the victim, had already left, shaken but unharmed. And KeanuReeves, well, he wasn't just anyone. A few tense minutes passed. Then, reluctantly, the officer sighed and pulled out a knife to cut the zip ties. "You're lucky, Holloway," he muttered. Mac was too stunned to reply. A debt not yet paid. Keanu started walking towards the station exit. Mac hesitated. He could leave. Disappear back into the city. Pretend this never happened. But something kept his feet planted. Finally, he exhaled sharply and followed. Keanu didn't say anything as they walked out of the station, stepping onto the quiet city streets. Mac glanced at him. Why'd you do that? Keanu kept his eyes ahead. Because someone once did the same for me. Mac frowned. You saying you used to be like me? Keanu finally looked at him, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. No, but I know what it's like to be lost. Mac had no response to that. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Keanu pulled a card from his jacket pocket and handed it to him. Come by tomorrow, 9 a.m. Mac took it reluctantly, glancing at the address, a community outreach center. What's this? He asked. A way out, Keanu replied. If you want it. Mac snorted. And if I don't? Keanu shrugged. Then I wasted my night. Mac studied him. There was no pressure in his voice, no forced guilt, just an open door. After a long pause, Mac shoved the card in his pocket. Guess I'll see you at 9. Keanu nodded once. Guess you will. And with that, they parted ways. For the first time in years, Mac felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Hope, the weight of redemption. A city that remembers. New York doesn't forget. It's a city of stories etched into pavement cracks and graffiti-splattered walls, of ghosts that haunt subway tunnels and alleys where deals are made and broken. For Marcus Mac Holloway, this city was both his home and his prison. After Keanu Reeves had done the impossible, had stopped the cops from throwing him into another cell, Mac found himself standing at a crossroads. He could disappear, fade into the streets like he always did, or he could do the one thing he had never done before. He could try. The card in his pocket felt heavier than it should have. A simple piece of paper, an address scribbled neatly, yet it felt like a chain around his soul. He had spent his whole life running, and now, for the first time, someone had thrown him a lifeline. The question was, did he have the strength to grab it? The arrival. The morning air was crisp, the city already alive with movement as Mac stood in front of the building. It was smaller than he expected, tucked between a bodega and a laundromat. The sign above the door was faded but readable. Horizon Outreach Center. He should walk away. That was what his instincts told him. This wasn't his world. Places like this were for people who still believed in change, people who still thought they could be saved. Mac had stopped believing a long time ago. And yet, Keanu Reeves had seen something in him last night, had looked at him like he was worth something. That look haunted him more than any jail cell ever had. With a heavy sigh, Mac pushed open the door. The first test. Inside, the center was quiet, but not empty. A few people moved about. A young woman stacking books on a shelf, an older man in a wheelchair talking to a volunteer. It smelled like old wood and fresh coffee, a strange mix of warmth and age. Then Mac spotted him. Keanu stood near the front desk, dressed casually in a dark hoodie and jeans. He looked up as Mac entered, and a slow, knowing smile crossed his face. You made it, Keanu said. Mac shifted uncomfortably, didn't have anything better to do. Keanu chuckled. I'll take that. He nodded toward a nearby hallway. Come on, let's talk. A conversation that changes everything. Keanu led Mac into a small office. Nothing fancy, just a desk, a few chairs, and a window overlooking the street. Keanu sat on the edge of the desk, arms crossed. So, you tell me, why are you here? Mac frowned. You told me to come. That's not an answer. Mac exhaled sharply. Look, man, I don't know what you want from me. You think you can just save me, give me a job, and suddenly I'm a new person. He let out a dry laugh. Life doesn't work like that. Keanu nodded, as if considering his words. You're right. It doesn't. Mac blinked. Then what's the point of all this? Keanu leaned forward slightly. The point, Mac, is that you're still here. If you really believed nothing could change, you wouldn't have come. Mac looked away. Silence stretched between them. Then Keanu spoke again. Look, I'm not gonna lie to you. This isn't easy. walking away from your past, choosing to be better. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But I've met a lot of people, and you know what I see when I look at you." Mac crossed his arms. "Enlighten me." Keanu's eyes softened. "I see someone who's tired. Tired of running, tired of failing, tired of being the guy people expect him to be." Mac felt his throat tighten. Because it was true. But admitting that was a different battle. Keanu let the silence sit before finally standing. "All right. You want to leave. Door's right there." Mac blinked. "What?" Keanu gestured to the exit. "You're free to go. No one's forcing you to stay. But if you do walk out, you better be damn sure that's the life you want. Because if you come back tomorrow, I'm gonna expect something from you." Mac frowned. "Like what?" Keanu's voice was firm. "Effort." Mac stared at him. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. A war within. Mac didn't go far. He sat on a bench across the street, staring at the building, running over the conversation in his head. Effort. What the hell did Keanu know about effort? The guy was a movie star, a millionaire. He could have anything he wanted. But the way he had looked at Mac, there had been no pity, no condescension, just an understanding. And that was worse, because it meant Keanu knew something about struggle, about fighting demons. Mac exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. His entire life, he had blamed the world for where he was. But now, for the first time, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he had played a part in it, too. The first step. The sun was setting when Mac finally stood. He looked at the card in his hand. 9 a.m. The choice was his. With a sigh, he shoved the card back into his pocket and walked away. This time, not disappearing into the darkness. This time, he knew where he was going. The road to redemption. A city of second chances. New York City had seen men like Marcus Mac Holloway before, men who had stumbled, fallen, and found themselves caught in an endless cycle of survival. The city didn't care who you were. It didn't care where you'd been. It only cared about where you were going. For the first time in his life, Mac wasn't sure of the answer. The streets felt different today. Maybe it was the weight in his chest, the quiet voice in his head telling him to turn around and go back to the life he knew. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in years, he was walking toward something instead of away from it. His feet carried him back to the Horizon Outreach Center, back to Keanu Reeves, and back to the question that haunted him. Did he really deserve a second chance? A test of commitment. The moment Mac stepped through the doors of the Outreach Center, he regretted it. People were moving everywhere. Volunteers stacking food in the donation pantry. A group of kids running through the hallway, laughing. A woman behind the front desk answering phone calls. It wasn't the kind of place where people like him belonged. Then he saw him. Keanu was standing near a group of men. Guys who looked like they had seen some hard years. Former addicts, ex-cons, people who had fought their own wars. Keanu met Mac's gaze and smiled. "You're late." Mac frowned, checking the clock on the wall. "It's 9:02. Keanu shrugged. "You're late." Mac exhaled sharply. This some kind of game. Keanu shook his head. No game, just a lesson. People who want to change show up on time. Mac clenched his jaw. He could turn around. He could walk right back out that door, and no one would stop him. But instead, he squared his shoulders. "Fine. I'm here. What now?" Keanu smiled. "Now, you work. The hardest job in the world." Mac expected some kind of speech, some dramatic moment where Keanu handed him a life-changing opportunity. Instead, Keanu led him to a back room where crates of donated clothes were stacked. "Sort these," Keanu said, "by size, type, and condition. Anything too worn or stained goes in that bin. The rest gets folded and packed." Mac raised an eyebrow. "That's it." Keanu smirked. "What, you wanted something glamorous?" Mac scoffed. "I just thought. You thought this would be easy. Keanu cut in. Redemption isn't easy, Mac. It's boring. It's slow. And it's earned, not given. Mac stared at him for a long moment. Then, with a frustrated sigh, he grabbed the first bundle of clothes and started sorting. Keanu gave a nod of approval before walking out. Mac muttered under his breath, "This better be worth it." Lessons in sweat and silence. Hours passed. Mac worked in silence, his mind restless. His fingers ached from folding, his legs stiff from standing. He wasn't used to this kind of work, the kind that didn't offer a payday at the end, the kind that didn't come with an easy way out. At one point, he thought about leaving. But then he remembered the look on Keanu's face last night. Not pity, not judgment, just belief. And damn it, that made it harder to walk away. So he kept working. The first real conversation. By noon, Mac had sorted through nearly half the crates. His shirt was damp with sweat, his patience wearing thin. Keanu walked in, holding 2 sandwiches. He handed one to Mac without a word and sat on a crate. Mac hesitated before taking it. "What, no big speech?" Keanu smirked. "What, you want one?" Mac huffed a laugh and took a bite. For a few moments, they ate in silence. Then Keanu spoke. "You want to know why I'm here, Mac?" Mac glanced at him. "I figured you just wanted to play hero." Keanu shook his head. "I'm here because someone once did this for me." Mac frowned. You had it rough." Keanu exhaled, staring at the ground. "I grew up moving from place to place. My dad walked out when I was young. I struggled in school, got into fights, lost people I cared about." His voice lowered. "Watched my best friend lose his life to addiction." Mac's chewing slowed. Keanu continued. "I had every reason to fall apart. But someone who didn't owe me a damn thing, gave me a chance." Mac swallowed hard. Keanu looked him dead in the eye. "Now I'm doing the same for you." Mac didn't know what to say to that. For the first time, he felt something crack inside him. A wall he had built for years, starting to crumble. The breaking point. The rest of the day passed slowly. Mac finished sorting the clothes. Then he cleaned the back room. Then he helped move supplies to the kitchen. It was exhausting, not just physically, but mentally. Because every second, his brain whispered, "You don't belong here. You're a thief, a failure. You'll never change." By the time the day ended, he was on edge. He found Keanu in the main hall. "All right," Mac said. "I did what you asked. Now what?" Keanu folded his arms. "Now you come back tomorrow." Mac scoffed. "You serious?" Keanu nodded. "Every day. Until you prove to yourself that you can do this." Mac's hands curled into fists. "And if I don't?" Keanu's voice was calm. "Then you prove me wrong." Mac's jaw tightened. Something about the way Keanu said it, the quiet certainty in his voice, made him want to fight. Not against Keanu. Against himself. Against every voice in his head telling him to quit. Without another word, Mac turned and walked out. But for the second time in 2 days, he knew where he'd be tomorrow. The road ahead. As Mac stepped into the night, the city felt different. It wasn't just a place of struggle anymore. It was a place where people fought. And maybe, just maybe, it was a place where people won. For the first time in years, Mac allowed himself to hope. Because tomorrow, at 9 a.m., he was going to show up. And he was going to fight. The ghosts that follow. A city that keeps score. New York never forgets. The city keeps a ledger, and every mistake you make gets marked down. Some debts are easy to repay. Others, they follow you like a shadow, whispering in the corners of your mind, waiting for the moment you let your guard down. For Marcus Mac Holloway, his past wasn't done with him yet. He was trying, really trying. But the city didn't care about effort. It cared about results. And results. They took time. Time Mac wasn't sure he had. The routine of redemption. For a week straight, Mac showed up at Horizon Outreach Center at exactly 9 a.m. Every day, Keanu greeted him with the same nod, the same small smirk, like he knew something Mac didn't. Mac wasn't sure what to make of it. He expected the work to get easier, but it didn't. Sorting donations, cleaning storage rooms, helping in the soup kitchen, running deliveries to shelters. It was exhausting, not just physically, mentally. Because every second he spent at the center, the voices in his head whispered, "This isn't you. You don't belong here. You're just playing pretend." He ignored them, mostly. But ignoring something doesn't make it disappear. And sooner or later, the past finds a way to catch up. A face from the past. It happened on a Thursday. Mac had just finished loading boxes into the back of a van when he felt it. That shift in the air. That electric charge that comes when trouble walks into a room. He turned, and his stomach dropped. Standing near the entrance of the center, hands stuffed into his jacket pockets, was a man Mac never wanted to see again. Reggie Stacks Colton. An old name, an old problem, and a reminder of everything Mac had been trying to leave behind. A debt unpaid. Stacks wasn't just some guy from the block. He was the kind of man who remembered debts, the kind of man who never let things slide. And Mac still owed him. Stacks smiled, slow and easy. Well, look who's gone all soft on me." Mac clenched his jaw. "What do you want, Stacks?" Stacks took a lazy step forward. "You know what I want, Mac. You thought you could just disappear. Thought I'd forget." Mac inhaled sharply. He didn't need to ask what Stacks was talking about. The money. The last job Mac had ever run, the one that went sideways. He had been supposed to split the payout with Stacks. Only there was no payout. The cops had been waiting. The whole thing was a setup. Mac had barely gotten out. Stacks had ended up behind bars for 6 months. And now he was here, looking to settle the score. Keanu steps in. Before Mac could answer, a voice cut through the tension. "Something wrong here." Keanu. He stepped beside Mac, arms crossed, gaze sharp. Stacks chuckled. "Ain't nothing wrong, Mr. Movie Star. Just catching up with an old friend." Keanu didn't blink. "Doesn't look like he wants to catch up." Stacks tilted his head, sizing Keanu up. "You his babysitter now." Keanu didn't flinch. "I'm just making sure you're not wasting his time." Mac could feel the energy shift. Stacks wasn't stupid. He knew who Keanu was. And more importantly, he knew what it meant to start something here. So he smiled. "No trouble, man. Just a friendly chat." Then he looked at Mac. "You know where to find me." And just like that, he was gone. But the damage was done. Because Mac knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The talk that had to happen. Keanu didn't say anything right away. He just waited. Mac exhaled sharply. "You gonna say something?" Keanu leaned against the van. "Depends. You gonna tell me the truth?" Mac hesitated. Then finally, he muttered, "I owe him." Keanu nodded. "How much?" Mac looked away. "Doesn't matter. He's not the kind of guy who forgets." Keanu considered that. "And you? Are you the kind of guy who runs?" Mac tensed. "I ain't running." Keanu studied him for a long moment. "Then what's the plan?" Mac didn't have one. He had spent the last week trying to build a future. Now his past was clawing at the door. And sooner or later, he'd have to answer. A choice that can't wait. That night, Mac couldn't sleep. He lay on the thin mattress in his rented room, staring at the ceiling. Stacks wasn't the kind of man who waited forever. And if Mac didn't deal with this, the life he was trying to build, it would be gone before it even started. The problem was, Mac didn't know how to fix it. Not without falling back into the world he was trying to escape. So, for the first time in a long time, he decided to ask for help. The unexpected offer. The next morning, Mac walked into the center and found Keanu in his office. He didn't waste time. I need your help. Keanu leaned back, nodding slightly. All right. Mac blinked. That's it? No questions. Keanu smirked. I already know the question. Now tell me, how bad is it? Mac exhaled. Stacks wants payback. He's not gonna stop. Keanu nodded slowly. And you don't have the money. Mac's jaw tightened, not even close. Silence stretched between them. Then Keanu spoke. Then let's find another way. Mac frowned. What? Keanu leaned forward. You want out of this life? Then let's get you out for good. No half measures. Mac stared. You serious? Keanu's eyes were steady. Always. Mac swallowed hard. Because for the first time in his life, someone was offering him more than survival. Someone was offering him freedom. The only question was he brave enough to take it? A deal with the devil. A city built on promises. New York isn't just a city of lights and noise. It's a city of deals, whispered agreements in back alleys, unspoken understandings between people trying to survive. It's a place where a man's word can be worth more than money, but also where one broken promise can bury you. Marcus Mac Holloway had spent years learning that lesson the hard way. And now, standing in KeanuReeves' office at the Horizon Outreach Center, he was about to put everything on the line. Because if he didn't, Stacks would bury him. Not with words, not with warnings, with violence. The plan that shouldn't work. Keanu leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled together, studying Mac like a puzzle he was trying to solve. Mac shifted uncomfortably. You got an idea or not? Keanu smirked. You're impatient. I'm desperate. Keanu nodded, as if that made sense. All right, we can approach this in two ways. 1. Pay him off. Mac scoffed. You got 50 grand lying around. Keanu tilted his head. Do you? Mac clenched his jaw. Of course he didn't. That wasn't just money. It was money. The kind only drug dealers and businessmen carried around in cash. Keanu exhaled. Then we go with option 2. Mac hesitated. Which is? Keanu's eyes darkened. We make Stacks realize that messing with you is a bad idea. Mac narrowed his eyes. And how do we do that? Keanu stood, adjusting his sleeves. We have a conversation. Mac's stomach turned. Stacks doesn't do conversations, man. Keanu smirked. Then I'll talk. You just stand there and look intimidating. Mac stared at him. Are you seriously about to go toe-to-toe with a guy who once beat someone half to death over a $50 bet? Keanu shrugged. I've dealt with worse. Mac rubbed his face. This is a bad idea. Keanu smiled. Probably. Then he grabbed his coat. Let's go. Walking into the fire, they found Stacks in his usual spot, a rundown pool hall on the edge of Brooklyn, the kind of place where the jukebox was always broken, and the air smelled like sweat and cheap beer. Stacks sat at a corner table, surrounded by his guys. He saw Mac first, then Keanu. His expression shifted from amusement to suspicion. Well, Dan, Stacks said, leaning back. You bringing celebrities to my house now, Mac? Keanu smiled easily, just here for a friendly chat. Stacks chuckled. That right? Keanu nodded. You've got a problem with Mac. I think we can fix that. Stacks raised an eyebrow. Fix it? Ain't nothing to fix. He owes me. Simple as that. Keanu glanced around the room. You run a business, Stacks. Stacks' smile faded slightly. What's it to you? Keanu leaned forward. It means you understand risk. You understand reputation. And you understand that some fights cost more than they're worth. Stacks' fingers drummed against the table. And? Keanu's voice dropped. I don't think Mac is worth your time. Stacks laughed. A genuine, full-bellied laugh. Oh man, you got it twisted. Mac ain't worth my time. That's why I gotta deal with him. Keanu smirked. I disagree. Stacks' amusement faded. You think just 'cause you're Keanu Reeves, you can walk in here and change the game. Keanu shrugged. Not trying to change the game, just making sure you don't make a bad bet. Stack's eyes darkened. And what bet is that? Keanu's voice was smooth as steel. Mac is working with me now. And that means if you come after him, you're coming after me. The room went silent. Mac felt his pulse hammering. Stack stared at Keanu for a long, tense moment. Then he exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. You got balls, man. I'll give you that. Keanu smiled. So I've been told. Stack studied him, then looked at Mac. Then, slowly, he leaned forward. I don't care who you got backing you, Mac, Stack said, voice low. You still owe me. That don't change. Keanu didn't blink. What's the price for wiping the slate clean? Stack smirked. You offering to pay. Keanu shook his head. I'm offering something better. Stack's raised an eyebrow. And what's that? Keanu leaned in. An opportunity. Stax laughed again, shaking his head. Man, you got nerve. Keanu just waited. Stax exhaled, considering. All right, hotshot. What you got in mind? The offer he couldn't refuse. Keanu pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. Stax looked at it. What's this? Keanu's voice was calm. A way to make real money. No cops. No risks. No running. Stax snorted. And what? I'm just supposed to trust you. Keanu shrugged. You trust money, don't you? Stax stared at the card for a long moment. Then he looked at Mac. Mac didn't say a word. This wasn't his fight anymore. Finally, Stax exhaled and leaned back. I ain't making no promises. Keanu nodded. Good. Neither am I. Stax smirked. You got 2 weeks. If I don't see results, we're back to square one. Keanu smiled. Fair enough. Then he stood and patted Mac's shoulder. Let's go. Mac followed, still trying to process what the hell had just happened. As they stepped out into the night, he turned to Keanu. You want to tell me what that was? Keanu smirked. That was a negotiation. Mac shook his head. And if it doesn't work? Keanu exhaled. Then we'll find another way. Mac stared at him. For the first time in his life, someone had stepped into the fire for him. And suddenly, for the first time in his life, he wanted to be worth it. The price of redemption. A city that watches. New York isn't just made of streets and skyscrapers. It's made of eyes. The city watches. It watches the people who rise, the ones who fall, and the ones who disappear into the cracks. For years, Marcus Mac Holloway had been one of those ghosts, slipping between the edges of survival, always running, always looking over his shoulder. But now, people were watching him for a different reason. And for the first time in his life, he had something to prove. The deal on the table. 2 weeks. That was the deadline Stax had given. 2 weeks for Keanu to prove that his way, his world, was better than the one Mac had been trapped in for years. 2 weeks to wipe out a debt without blood, without threats, without running. The problem. Stax wasn't a man who played fair. And Mac knew that better than anyone. The impossible job. Keanu's opportunity wasn't just talk. He had connections, real ones. Through the Horizon Outreach Center, Keanu had set up a legitimate business deal, an investment in a small logistics company that helped employ ex-cons and people trying to get back on their feet. It was clean, legal, and most importantly, it was profitable. Stax, despite his reputation, wasn't stupid. He liked money more than he liked violence. But trusting a Hollywood star with a business proposition, that was going to take more than a handshake. Earning his place. For the first time in years, Mac had a real job. Not just a hustle. A real, paying job. Keanu got him work at the logistics company, loading, organizing shipments, handling deliveries. It was hard, honest, and exhausting. Every morning, Mac woke up sore. Every night, he collapsed onto his bed, questioning if this was even worth it. But every time he thought about quitting, he remembered the way Keanu had looked at him in that subway station, like he was worth saving. And if Keanu believed that, maybe, just maybe, Mac could believe it too. The test. Stacks wasn't the kind of guy to take things on faith. So after 1 week, he showed up. Not at the outreach center, not at Keanu's office, but at the job site. Mac was in the middle of unloading a shipment when he saw Stacks leaning against a parked car, watching, waiting. Mac wiped the sweat from his forehead and walked over. Stacks smirked. "Look at you, 9-to-5 man now, huh?" Mac didn't bite. "What do you want, Stacks?" Stacks shrugged. "Just checking in, making sure you ain't wasting my time." Mac crossed his arms. "I'm here, ain't I?" Stacks' smirk faded slightly. For now, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a cigarette. "Thing is, Mac, I know you. You get all hyped up on change, but it never sticks. You always come back." Mac tensed. Because the worst part, Stacks wasn't wrong. For years, Mac had tried to go straight. And every time, something pulled him back in. Stacks exhaled smoke and smiled. "Tell me the truth, man. You really think this life is for you?" Mac swallowed hard. Then, before he could answer, another voice cut through the tension. "Doesn't matter what he thinks." Stacks turned. Keanu stood a few feet away, arms crossed, calm, unshaken. Stacks chuckled. "Man, you always pop up at the right time, huh?" Keanu didn't blink. "I make a habit of it." Stacks took another drag of his cigarette. "You really think this guy's got what it takes?" Keanu's voice was steady. "I don't think. I know." Stacks studied Keanu for a long moment. Then he looked at Mac. "You buying this, Mac?" Mac met Stacks' gaze, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid. "I'm done, Stacks." The words came out steady, unshaken. Stacks exhaled, shaking his head. "Damn shame." Mac tensed. Was this the moment? Was this where it all fell apart? Stacks stared at him for a long time. Then he flicked his cigarette onto the ground and stomped it out. Then he smirked. "All right, man, you win." Mac's breath caught. "What?" Stacks shrugged. "I ain't gonna waste my time chasing a man who don't want to be chased." He nodded toward Keanu. "Guess your boy did the impossible." Keanu smiled slightly. "It happens." Stacks chuckled. "Yeah, well, don't think I'm going soft. If I hear you're slipping, Mac, I'll be back." Mac nodded. "You won't." Stacks gave one last look, then turned and walked away. And just like that, it was over. The moment that mattered. Mac stood there, still processing what had just happened. Stacks was gone. The debt wiped. No blood, no threats, just a choice. His choice. He turned to Keanu. "You really believe I could do it?" Keanu smirked. "You're the only one who ever needed convincing." Mac exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. "Damn." Keanu patted his shoulder. "Welcome to the rest of your life." For the first time in years, Mac laughed. Because for the first time in years, he was free. A future worth fighting for. Weeks passed. Then months. Mac kept the job. Kept showing up. Kept proving, to himself, to Keanu, to the city, that he wasn't the man he used to be. One night, after a long shift, he walked back to the subway. And for the first time since that fateful night, he saw her. The old woman from the train. Evelyn. She was standing on the platform, holding the same worn bag. This time, she wasn't clutching it so tight. Mac hesitated, then walked over. "Ma'am." Evelyn turned, eyes narrowing slightly. Then, recognition dawned. "You," she whispered. Mac nodded. "Yeah, it's me." She studied him. Then she smiled. And in that smile, Max saw something he had never seen before. Not fear, not suspicion. Something else. Something he had fought his whole life to earn. Trust. Max swallowed the lump in his throat. And for the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged.